An 11-year-old girl, daughter of a cleaning lady, finds a suspicious contract left on the desk of a large company. Unaware of the seriousness, she reveals a mistake that catches the attention of the company's owner. What seemed like just a small detail leads to the discovery of a million-dollar fraud hidden for years. If you were touched by this beautiful story of resilience and love, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching from. Continuing. Chapter 1. The Girl Who Saw the Numbers. The maintenance staff at Pinnacle Investments rarely received a second glance from the executives who strode through the gleaming hallways of the Manhattan skyscraper. But 11-year-old Lily Taylor wasn't like the other employees' children who occasionally accompanied their parents to work when childcare fell through. With her worn backpack stuffed with math workbooks and a dog-eared copy of Nancy Drew, Lily noticed everything. "Mom, how much longer?" Lily whispered, her sneakers squeaking against the polished marble floor as she followed her mother, Patricia Taylor, who was pushing a cleaning cart down the corridor of the 42nd floor. "Just 3 more offices, sweetie," Patricia replied, her voice tired but gentle. "Then we can catch the 9:30 bus home. Did you finish your homework?" Lily nodded, her chestnut ponytail bouncing. "Hours ago. Can I look at the view again, please?" Patricia checked her watch and sighed. 10 minutes, Lily. Stay away from the desks and don't touch anything." With permission granted, Lily slipped into the corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the glittering New York skyline. This was her favorite spot in the entire building, the office of Mr. Alexander Wells, CEO of Pinnacle Investments. Unlike the other executives' sterile workspaces, Mr. Wells' office contained actual signs of humanity, family photos, a collection of vintage baseball cards displayed in a glass case, and shelves lined with books that appeared to have been read rather than merely displayed. Lily gravitated toward the window, gazing at the city lights below. At 11, she already understood that this view represented a world far removed from the cramped 2-bedroom apartment she shared with her mother in Queens, a world of opportunity that seemed perpetually out of reach. The enormous mahogany desk behind her was cluttered with documents, unusual for this time of night. Curiosity piqued. Lily glanced over her shoulder to ensure her mother wasn't approaching before taking a cautious step closer. A thick contract lay open, sticky notes protruding from its edges. Numbers jumped out at her from the pages, numbers that didn't match. Lily had always had a gift with figures. While other kids struggled with fractions, she found patterns and relationships between numbers as easily as breathing, and something about the numbers on these pages struck her as wrong. On page 3, the licensing fee was listed as $4.75 million, but on page 17, the same fee appeared as $7.25 million. The discrepancy wasn't a simple typo. The calculations throughout the document had been adjusted to accommodate both figures in different sections, with the higher amount cleverly disguised in a subsection about international distribution rights. Lily frowned, pulling her notebook from her backpack and jotting down the discrepancies. She found 3 more similar inconsistencies before the sound of the office door opening made her jump. "I thought I left those on my—" The deep voice stopped abruptly. Lily spun around to find herself face-to-face with Alexander Wells himself. At 52, the CEO maintained the athletic build of his college rowing days, though silver now threaded through his dark hair. His custom-tailored suit probably cost more than Patricia's monthly salary. "You're not my assistant," he stated, raising an eyebrow. "No, sir," Lily replied, her heart hammering. "I'm Lily Taylor. My mom cleans your office." Recognition flickered across his face. "Patricia's daughter. What are you doing with my Westridge contract?" Lily hesitated, clutching her notebook. "I wasn't touching it, just looking, but the numbers don't match." Wells frowned, approaching the desk. "What do you mean they don't match?" "The licensing fee," Lily explained, pointing to the relevant sections without touching the pages. "It's different here and here, and the percentages change too, but in a way that's hard to notice unless you're really paying attention." Wells leaned forward, his expression shifting from skepticism to shock as he flipped between the pages Lily indicated. "This can't be right," he muttered, more to himself than to her. "There's more," Lily ventured, showing him her notes. "The royalty structures are different in sections 4 and 11, and the minimum guarantee changes from $2.3 million to $3.1 million between the summary and the appendix." Wells stared at her, then back at the contract. "How did you spot this?" Lily shrugged. "Numbers just make sense to me. These ones seemed wrong." The door opened again and Patricia entered, her face paling when she saw her daughter conversing with the CEO. "Mr. Wells, I'm so sorry if Lily disturbed you. She was just— Your daughter may have just saved Pinnacle from a very expensive mistake," Wells interrupted, his voice filled with wonder. He turned to Patricia. "Did you know she has an extraordinary gift with numbers?" Patricia's surprised expression softened with pride. "She's always been good with math. Her teachers say she could skip ahead 2 grades if we could afford the right school." Wells nodded thoughtfully, then turned back to Lily. "Would you mind showing me exactly what you found?" "All of it?" For the next 20 minutes, Lily walked the billionaire through each discrepancy she'd discovered. With each revelation, Wells' expression grew darker. "This wasn't an accident," he finally said, closing the contract. "These changes were deliberate." "But who would do that?" Patricia asked, now standing protectively beside her daughter. Wells ran a hand through his silver-streaked hair. "That's what I intend to find out." He fixed his gaze on Lily. "You have an exceptional mind, young lady, one that shouldn't be wasted." That night, as Patricia tucked Lily into bed in their modest apartment, neither could have imagined how their lives were about to change. In the penthouse suite across town, Alexander Wells sat surrounded by contracts, a glass of scotch untouched at his elbow, as he began unraveling a web of financial manipulation that stretched back years. Patricia switched off Lily's bedside lamp and kissed her forehead. "I'm proud of you for being honest today, but remember, we're not part of their world." "Why not?" Lily asked. "How you went to law school, you're smart like them." A shadow passed over Patricia's face. "Life takes unexpected turns, sweetie. Now get some sleep." What Patricia didn't say was that her unexpected turn had a name: James Harrington, founding partner of Harrington and Wells, and a man whose ruthless ambition had destroyed her promising legal career 11 years ago. A man whose handsome features Patricia sometimes glimpsed in her daughter's smile, though Lily had never met him, and believed her father was a law student who'd abandoned them before her birth. As Lily drifted to sleep, Patricia stared at the cracked ceiling, remembering the prestigious internship that had once been her pathway to success, before harassment allegations and a fabricated theft claim had shattered her dreams. The same firm where her daughter had just uncovered financial irregularities that would soon expose secrets buried for over a decade. In his office, Alexander Wells reached for his phone, hesitated, then set it down again. Before confronting his business partner, he needed more evidence. Tomorrow, he would begin his own investigation, never suspecting that the truth would connect him to Patricia and Lily in ways none of them could have anticipated. Chapter 2. Buried Secrets. Alexander Wells arrived at Pinnacle Investments at 5:30 the next morning, long before the usual stream of employees would flood the building. The security guard at the front desk barely glanced up as Wells swiped his badge through the reader. Being first in and last out was nothing unusual for the CEO, but today was different. Today, Alexander wasn't reviewing quarterly projections or preparing for investor meetings. He was hunting for evidence of fraud within his own company. In the privacy of his office, he spread out the Westridge contract that young Lily Taylor had flagged the previous evening. In the harsh morning light, the discrepancies were even more apparent. How had he missed them? More importantly, how had his entire legal team missed them? He pulled up the digital version of the document on his computer and discovered it matched the correct figures Lily had identified. Someone had altered the physical copy after it had been reviewed and approved. The question was, who had access to make such changes, and why? Alexander's intercom buzzed. "Mr. Wells, Mr. Harrington is here to see you." James Harrington, his business partner of 20 years and the one person besides himself with unrestricted access to all company documents. "Send him in," Alexander replied, quickly gathering the papers into a folder. James strode in with the confidence of a man who had never doubted his place in the world. At 55, he remained as imposing as he had been when he and Alexander founded the firm, fresh out of business school. His custom Italian suit and expertly tailored shirt gave no hint of the extra weight he'd gained over the years. "Alex, you're in early. Worried about the Westridge deal?" James flashed the smile that had charmed countless clients and juries over the years. "Just reviewing some details," Alexander replied carefully. "Have a seat." James settled into the chair across from Alexander's desk. "I've been thinking about the international expansion. If we increase our position in emerging markets by 15%— James, Alexander interrupted, who handled the final review of the Westridge contract. The question seemed to catch James off guard, but he recovered quickly. Legal department as usual, why? And who on our team would have been responsible for the final sign-off? James shrugged. That would be Davidson, I believe. Is there a problem? Alexander studied his old friend's face, searching for any sign of deception. Possibly. I'm going to postpone the signing until we can conduct a thorough review. James's smile faltered slightly. The Westridge people are flying in tomorrow specifically for the signing. Postponing now would send a terrible message. Better a delay than a mistake we can't undo, Alexander replied firmly. After James left, Alexander contacted his head of security, requesting access logs for the document room over the past month. Then he called the accounting department, asking for a comprehensive audit of the firm's major contracts from the past 5 years. By mid-afternoon, a disturbing pattern had emerged. The Westridge contract wasn't an isolated incident. Alexander identified 7 major contracts with similar discrepancies, all structured to divert funds through obscure subsidiary accounts. The sophisticated nature of the fraud suggested someone with intimate knowledge of the company's operations and financial systems. At 3 o'clock, Alexander was deep in spreadsheets when his assistant announced an unexpected visitor. Patricia Taylor is here, sir, the maintenance worker. She has her daughter with her. Alexander looked up in surprise. Send them in. Patricia entered hesitantly, her uniform replaced by modest business casual attire. Lily followed, looking uncomfortable in a dress that appeared to be her Sunday best. Mr. Wells, I apologize for coming without an appointment, Patricia began, but after what happened last night, I felt I needed to speak with you. Not at all, Alexander gestured to the chairs across from his desk. Please sit down. I was actually hoping to talk with you both again. Once seated, Patricia twisted her hands nervously in her lap. First, I want to assure you that Lily knows she shouldn't have been looking at confidential documents. We don't want any trouble. You're not in trouble, Alexander assured them. Quite the opposite. Lily did Pinnacle a tremendous service by spotting those discrepancies. Lily beamed, sitting up straighter. That's very kind, Patricia said, but that's not why we're here. She took a deep breath. What Lily found, it brings up some difficult history. History I've tried to leave behind. Alexander leaned forward, intrigued. What do you mean? Before I worked in maintenance, I was a law student at Columbia. 11 years ago, I interned at Harrington and Wells. Alexander's eyebrows shot up. You worked here? As an intern? Patricia nodded. Under James Harrington directly. I was top of my class with offers from several firms. But I chose Harrington and Wells because of its reputation for corporate ethics. A bitter laugh held no humor. Ironic, isn't it? A cold feeling settled in Alexander's stomach. What happened? Mr. Harrington took a special interest in my career. At first, I was flattered by the attention from such a prestigious attorney. But his interest wasn't professional. Patricia glanced at Lily, choosing her words carefully. When I refused his advances, things got ugly. He claimed I had stolen confidential client information to sell to competitors. That's absurd, Alexander said. There would have been an investigation, evidence. There was an investigation, Patricia interrupted, conducted by James's close associates. They found a flash drive in my desk containing sensitive documents I'd never seen before. It was his word against mine, and no one was going to believe an intern over James Harrington. Alexander felt sick. He'd been traveling extensively during that period, overseeing their European expansion. He remembered James mentioning an intern who'd been dismissed for ethical violations, but he'd never questioned the details. I was dismissed from the internship program, blacklisted from every major firm in New York, and eventually had to drop out of law school. Patricia's voice was steady now, her initial nervousness replaced by quiet dignity. I was also pregnant. Alexander's gaze shifted to Lily, who was listening with wide eyes. The implication was unmistakable. Lily doesn't know the details, Patricia said softly. She knows her father was someone I met in law school who wasn't ready for a family. That's true enough. Does James know? Alexander asked quietly. Patricia shook her head. I never told him. After what he did to me, I wanted nothing from him. I rebuilt my life without his money or his name. Alexander studied Lily's face, noting features he'd seen countless times across a boardroom table. The realization was staggering. Why are you telling me this now? Because whatever Lily found in that contract, I suspect James is behind it. Patricia's eyes hardened. And if he is, you need to know exactly who you're dealing with. Alexander nodded slowly. I appreciate your candor, Patricia. "And your courage in coming forward." He turned to Lily. "And thank you again for your sharp eyes. You may have uncovered something much bigger than a few mismatched numbers." After they left, Alexander sat motionless behind his desk, processing the implications of Patricia's revelation. The fraud he'd discovered that morning now took on a more personal dimension. If James had been embezzling from their company, how many other lives had he ruined along the way? Alexander picked up the phone. "Janet, please contact our outside counsel and reschedule all my appointments for the rest of the week." He paused. "Also, find out if Davidson from legal is still in the building. I need to speak with him immediately." As the afternoon sun cast long shadows across his office, Alexander began assembling the pieces of a puzzle that had begun 11 years ago with a promising law student named Patricia Taylor. A puzzle that her 11-year-old daughter had unwittingly brought to light, and that would soon force Alexander to confront the unsettling question of just how well he knew the man who had been his friend and business partner for over 2 decades. Chapter 3. Connecting the Dots. Patricia Taylor hadn't set foot in Queen's Public Library for months, but today she found herself at a computer terminal, fingers trembling slightly as she typed in the password to her rarely used email account. Lily sat at a nearby table, absorbed in her math workbook, occasionally glancing up to check on her mother. After their meeting with Alexander Wells that morning, Patricia had called in sick to her evening cleaning shift. Her mind was too turbulent to focus on work. 11 years of carefully constructed walls were crumbling, and she needed to retrieve something she'd tucked away long ago, digital insurance she'd never thought she'd use. The email was still there, sent to herself the day after her termination from Harrington and Wells, buried under thousands of unread messages. The subject line read simply, "In case." Patricia clicked on it, entered the password, and downloaded the attached files to a USB drive she'd purchased on the way to the library. "Mom?" Lily's voice broke her concentration. "Are we in trouble because of what I found?" Patricia quickly closed the email. "No, sweetie, you did the right thing. Mr. Wells was very grateful." "Then why do you look worried?" Patricia managed a smile. "Just adult stuff. Nothing for you to worry about." But as they rode the subway home, Patricia couldn't help wondering if she'd made a terrible mistake by coming forward. James Harrington wasn't a man who tolerated threats to his power or reputation. By sharing her history with Alexander Wells, she had potentially painted a target on both her and Lily's backs. Across town, in a private dining room at Le Bernardin, Alexander Wells sat across from Edward Davidson, Pinnacle's head of legal. The attorney had worked at the firm for 15 years and was among Alexander's most trusted employees. "I need complete honesty, Ed," Alexander said after their meals arrived. "No professional courtesies, no concern for the chain of command. Just the truth." Davidson nodded cautiously. "Of course, Alex. The Westridge contract contains deliberate discrepancies designed to siphon funds through shell companies. It's not the only one." Alexander placed a folder on the table. 7 major contracts over the past 3 years show similar patterns. All passed through our legal department. All required sign-off from a senior partner. Davidson's fork clattered against his plate. That's impossible. Our review processes were bypassed," Alexander finished. "I need to know how, and I need to know who knew about it." Davidson's face had gone pale. "Alex, if what you're saying is true, this implicates people at the highest levels of the firm." "I'm well aware." After a long pause, Davidson set down his napkin. 2 years ago, James asked me to implement a new review protocol for our highest value contracts. Final versions would be reviewed exclusively by him and a select team he personally appointed. Without my knowledge, Davidson looked uncomfortable. "He said you had approved it, that you wanted to streamline the process for our premium clients." He hesitated. "I should have confirmed with you directly, I'm sorry." Alexander's jaw tightened. "Who's on this special review team?" "Mercer, Collins, and Porter." Alexander nodded. 3 junior attorneys, all personally recruited by James over the past 5 years. "And the physical documents? Who handles them after final review?" "They go to James's executive assistant before filing." "Sophie Chen," Alexander murmured. James had hired Sophie 4 years ago, insisting she replace his previous assistant of 12 years. A picture was forming, and it wasn't pretty. James had systematically positioned loyal people at every checkpoint where fraud might be detected. "One more thing," Alexander said. "Do you remember an intern named Patricia Taylor? She would have been here about 11 years ago." Davidson frowned, thinking. Vaguely, there was some scandal. She was dismissed for stealing client information, I believe. And you believe that? I had no reason not to. James handled the situation personally. Davidson's eyes widened as understanding dawned. Are you suggesting that was connected to what's happening now? Alexander didn't answer directly. I need copies of every major contract from the past 5 years, quietly, and I need you to tell no one about this conversation. Back at their apartment, Patricia tucked Lily into bed, then retreated to their small kitchen table. She opened her laptop and inserted the USB drive, reviewing its contents for the first time in over a decade. The files contained emails, voice recordings, and documents she had collected during her internship, evidence of James's inappropriate behavior and, more significantly, questionable financial practices she had stumbled upon while working late one night. It was these discoveries, she believed, that had made her a threat James needed to eliminate. At the time, terrified and pregnant, she had chosen to walk away rather than fight a battle she couldn't win. But now, with her daughter unwittingly pulling at threads that could unravel James's carefully constructed schemes, the stakes were different. Patricia picked up her phone and dialed the number Alexander Wells had given her that morning. Mr. Wells, it's Patricia Taylor. There's something I think you should see. The following morning, Alexander sat in his home office, coffee growing cold as he reviewed the files Patricia had sent him. The evidence was old but damning. Emails showing James had been engaging in financial improprieties even 11 years ago, though on a much smaller scale. Most disturbing were the voice recordings Patricia had secretly made during their one-on-one meetings, capturing James's inappropriate comments and veiled threats when she rebuffed him. The final recording, made the day before her termination, captured James explicitly threatening to ruin her career if she reported his behavior or discussed certain financial documents she had processed. Alexander's phone rang. The caller ID showed James Harrington. Alex, where are you? The Westridge team has been waiting in the conference room for 30 minutes. Alexander had completely forgotten about the signing. I can't make it, James. Something urgent has come up. What could possibly be more important than a $50 million deal? We need to talk. My house tonight, 7 o'clock. Before James could protest, Alexander ended the call. Then he dialed his security chief. Bob, I need a complete background check on James Harrington's assistant, Sophie Chen, and I need the building's keycard access logs for the past 6 months, every time she or James accessed the document room outside normal business hours. Next, he called Patricia. I've reviewed everything you sent. It's certainly troubling, but much of it is circumstantial and dated. We need more recent evidence if we're going to confront James effectively. What are you suggesting? Patricia asked. I have a proposal that might benefit both of us, but it involves Lily's mathematical abilities. That afternoon, Alexander met Patricia and Lily at a quiet cafe in Brooklyn, well away from the financial district where they might be recognized. I'd like to hire Lily as a consultant, Alexander explained after they'd settled with their drinks. Her eye for numerical patterns is extraordinary. With your permission, I'd like her to review some financial documents. Patricia frowned. She's 11, Mr. Wells. I'm aware. But she has a gift that my entire financial department lacks, the ability to spot subtle inconsistencies that most trained professionals would miss. He turned to Lily. You wouldn't need to understand the business implications. Just identify when numbers don't match or patterns seem wrong, like you did with the Westridge contract. Lily's eyes lit up. Like a number detective? Alexander smiled. Exactly like that. Patricia still looked uncertain. And what do we get out of this arrangement? Beyond standard consultant fees, my word that if we find evidence of wrongdoing by James Harrington, I will ensure he faces appropriate consequences, both professional and personal. Alexander met Patricia's gaze steadily, including acknowledging his responsibilities to Lily, if that's what you want. Patricia stiffened. I've never asked for anything from him. Perhaps it's time you did, Alexander replied gently. Not for yourself, but for her. As they discussed the details, none of them noticed the woman at a corner table, pretending to read while her phone captured their entire conversation. Sophie Chen had followed Alexander from his penthouse, as James had instructed after their tense phone call that morning. By the time Alexander arrived home to prepare for his meeting with James, Sophie had already reported back to her boss. James Harrington now knew that his past had returned to haunt him, in the form of a former intern and the daughter he never knew existed. A daughter whose mathematical talents threatened to expose the elaborate financial scheme he'd been running for years. James poured himself 3 fingers of scotch and stared out at the Manhattan skyline from his Upper East Side apartment. After all he'd built, after all he'd accomplished, he wouldn't let a cleaning woman and her brat destroy everything. There had to be a way to contain this situation before Alexander uncovered the full extent of his activities. He picked up his phone and dialed a number. "It's Harrington. We have a problem." Chapter 4. The Truth in Numbers. Alexander Wells's spacious Tribeca loft felt unusually claustrophobic as he awaited James Harrington's arrival. On the coffee table before him lay copies of the documents Patricia had provided, alongside the files compiled by his security team. The evidence was substantial, but still not definitive enough to prove James's culpability beyond reasonable doubt. The doorbell rang precisely at 7. James had always been punctual, a trait Alexander once admired in his business partner. Now it felt like another aspect of the careful facade James had constructed. "Alex," James greeted him with a firm handshake, as though this were any other business meeting. He handed Alexander a bottle of 30-year-old Macallan. "Thought we might need this for whatever's so urgent it couldn't wait until tomorrow." Alexander accepted the whiskey without comment and led James to the living room. James's eyes immediately landed on the spread of documents. "Working from home tonight?" James asked, his tone casual, though his shoulders tensed visibly. "You could say that." Alexander gestured to the sofa. "Please, sit down." James lowered himself onto the leather couch, unbuttoning his suit jacket with practiced ease. "So what's this about?" "The Westridge deal, in a manner of speaking." Alexander remained standing. "I've been reviewing our major contracts from the past 5 years. I've found some irregularities." James's expression didn't change, but his right hand twitched slightly, a tell Alexander had noticed during poker games over the years, whenever James was bluffing with a weak hand. "What kind of irregularities?" "Discrepancies in payment structures, inconsistent royalty calculations, mismatched figures between contract summaries and appendices." Alexander selected a document from the table. "The Westridge contract alone contains adjustments that would divert approximately $2.5 million to offshore accounts over the next 3 years. James laughed, though the sound held no warmth. "Sounds like someone in legal needs to be fired." "Legal was bypassed," Alexander replied. "These contracts were handled by your special review team, the one you created without my knowledge or approval." The mask slipped for just a moment before James regained his composure. "I created that team to improve efficiency, not to bypass processes. And you were briefed on it during the Tokyo expansion meetings." "No, I wasn't." Alexander's voice remained calm. "Just as I wasn't informed when you orchestrated the dismissal of a promising intern 11 years ago, an intern who had discovered similar financial irregularities in our client accounts." James stood abruptly. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Patricia Taylor." Alexander watched James's face carefully. "She was one of our top legal interns in 2014. You accused her of stealing confidential information after she rejected your advances." "That's absurd," James snapped. "She was caught red-handed with proprietary documents on a personal device. We could have pressed charges, but I was merciful." "Merciful?" Alexander repeated. "Is that what you call planting evidence to destroy someone's career? Is that what you call abandoning your own child?" James went completely still. "What are you talking about?" "Patricia was pregnant when you had her fired, with your daughter." Alexander pushed a photograph across the table, a school portrait of Lily. "She's 11 now, brilliant with numbers. In fact, she's the one who spotted the discrepancies in the Westridge contract that started this whole investigation." James stared at the photograph, his expression unreadable. For a moment, Alexander thought he glimpsed genuine shock in his partner's eyes before they hardened again. "This is emotional manipulation, Alex. I expected better from you." James straightened his tie. "Whatever Patricia Taylor told you is a lie, and whatever discrepancies exist in our contracts are clerical errors, not fraud." "Then you won't mind if we bring in forensic accountants to verify that?" Alexander challenged. "Or if we request a DNA test to confirm Lily's paternity?" James's face flushed with anger. "You're throwing away 20 years of friendship based on the word of a cleaning woman and a child? Do you have any idea how pathetic that sounds?" "I have evidence, James. Financial records, access logs, witness statements." Alexander picked up another folder. "Sophie Chen has been very cooperative since we discovered the offshore accounts in her name. This finally broke through James's composure. Sophie would never. She already has. Immunity deals tend to inspire loyalty shifts. This was a bluff. Alexander had yet to approach Sophie officially, but James didn't need to know that. James sank back onto the sofa, suddenly looking older than his 55 years. What do you want from me, Alex? The truth. All of it. Starting with Patricia Taylor. After a long silence, James poured himself a generous measure of the Macallan he'd brought. Fine. Yes, I pursued Patricia. She was brilliant, beautiful, ambitious, exactly the type who would understand the demands of someone in my position. When she rejected me, I was ungracious. Ungracious, Alexander repeated flatly. You fabricated evidence to have her fired. James waved a dismissive hand. She had already seen things she shouldn't have, discrepancies in the Heidelberg account. I needed her gone before she connected the dots. He sipped his whiskey. I had no idea she was pregnant. She never told me. Would it have made a difference if she had? James didn't answer immediately. Probably not, he finally admitted. I wasn't interested in fatherhood then, still not, frankly. And the financial fraud? How long has that been going on? James's laugh was hollow. Longer than you'd believe. Small amounts at first. Just enough to support some investments outside the firm. Then larger sums as opportunities arose. He shrugged. The firm makes so much money, Alex. Hundreds of millions every year. Who was really being hurt if I skimmed a little off the top? Our clients, our employees, me. Alexander's voice hardened. How much have you taken? James swirled the amber liquid in his glass. Approximately 47 million over 15 years. The figure was staggering. Alexander felt physically ill. I want your resignation on my desk tomorrow morning, he said, after regaining his composure. You'll surrender your equity in the firm as restitution, and you'll cooperate fully with our internal investigation. And if I refuse, then I take everything to the SEC, the district attorney, and the Bar Association. Alexander's expression was implacable. You'll lose your license, your freedom, and every dollar you've stolen. James set down his glass with deliberate care. And what about the girl? What do you want regarding her? That's between you and Patricia, but if I were you, I'd start by acknowledging her existence and perhaps setting up a trust fund for her education. James stood, straightening his suit. I'll have my resignation letter to you by 9 tomorrow. My lawyers will contact you regarding the equity transfer. He moved toward the door, then paused. You know this will damage the firm. Clients will leave when rumors start circulating. Perhaps, Alexander acknowledged, but Pinnacle will survive with its integrity intact. That's more important than any client or contract. After James left, Alexander poured himself a drink and called Patricia. He admitted everything, Alexander told her. The fraud, the false accusations against you, he knows about Lily now. Patricia's silence spoke volumes before she finally asked, what happens next? James resigns tomorrow. We'll handle the financial aspects internally to avoid a public scandal. Alexander hesitated. He didn't deny paternity, but he didn't exactly embrace the idea of fatherhood either. I never expected him to, Patricia said quietly. Lily and I have managed just fine without him for 11 years. You won't have to manage alone anymore, Alexander promised. James will make financial provisions for Lily, and I'd still like to offer you both a more permanent arrangement at Pinnacle. As they discussed the details, Alexander gazed out at the New York skyline. The firm he'd spent his life building would survive this crisis, though not unscathed. But perhaps, he reflected, this was an opportunity for transformation rather than merely damage control. The next morning, James's resignation letter arrived as promised. The boardroom was silent as Alexander explained the situation to the other partners, omitting specific details about Patricia and Lily while emphasizing the financial misconduct that had necessitated James's departure. We have a difficult road ahead, Alexander concluded, but I believe Pinnacle can emerge from this stronger and more ethical than before. As the meeting adjourned, Alexander's assistant handed him a note. Mr. Wells, Patricia and Lily Taylor are here to see you. They waited in his office, Lily exploring the bookshelves while Patricia sat stiffly in a visitor's chair. It's done, Alexander told them. James has resigned. The board has been informed of financial irregularities, though I've kept your involvement private for now. Patricia nodded. Thank you. Have you considered my proposal? The night before, after discussing James's confession, Patricia had surprised Alexander with an unexpected suggestion, one that could potentially address multiple problems facing Pinnacle in the wake of James's departure. I have, Alexander replied. and I think it has merit. But are you sure you're ready to step back into the legal world after all this time? Patricia's chin lifted with determination. More than ready. And with your support, I believe I can make a significant contribution to rebuilding Pinnacle's ethical foundation. As they discussed the details of Patricia's proposal, Lily continued exploring the office, her sharp eyes taking in every detail of the world that had been denied to her mother, and that might soon become part of their future. Chapter 5. New Beginnings. 3 months after James Harrington's resignation, the offices of Pinnacle Investments had undergone a transformation that went beyond the physical renovations on the executive floor. The company's culture was shifting, painfully at times but inexorably, toward greater transparency and ethical accountability. Patricia Taylor straightened her charcoal blazer as she entered the glass-walled conference room, where the compliance team awaited her presentation. At 36, Patricia had a poise that belied the uncertainty she still sometimes felt in this world she'd been forced to abandon over a decade ago. "Good morning," she greeted the assembled team. "Let's begin with the quarterly ethics review." As the newly appointed Director of Corporate Ethics and Compliance, a position Alexander had created specifically for her, Patricia was tasked with ensuring that the financial manipulation perpetrated by James Harrington could never happen again. The job had required her to return to law school part-time to complete her long-abandoned degree, but Alexander had arranged for the firm to cover her tuition and provide flexible working hours. Across town, in the gifted program at Westridge Academy, Lily Taylor was presenting her mathematics project to classmates who still viewed her with a mixture of curiosity and wariness. The new girl who had appeared mid-semester, whose tuition was reportedly being paid by one of the wealthiest men in New York, was an object of fascination. "In conclusion," Lily said, pointing to her final slide, "pattern recognition in numerical sequences can help identify anomalies in almost any data set, from financial records to climate statistics." Her confidence had grown immensely since her days of quietly trailing behind her mother on cleaning rounds. "Excellent work, Lily," her teacher praised. "The practical applications you've outlined are quite sophisticated for someone your age." After class, Lily gathered her books, ignoring the whispers that followed her down the hallway. Her new life, the private school, the Upper West Side apartment, the weekend sessions with Mr. Wells, was still an adjustment, but the opportunities now available to her made the occasional discomfort worthwhile. Back at Pinnacle, Patricia concluded her meeting and returned to her office to find Alexander waiting. "How did the compliance team respond to the new protocols?" he asked, rising from the visitor's chair. "Resistance from some of the old guard," Patricia replied, setting down her materials. But the younger associates seemed to appreciate having clearer guidelines. "How was the investor call?" Alexander grimaced. "As expected. Our stock is down 12% since the reorganization announcement. 3 major clients have moved their portfolios to competitors. They'll come back," Patricia said, with more confidence than she felt. "Once they see the new Pinnacle in action." Alexander smiled tiredly. "Your optimism is refreshing. But we're not out of the woods yet." He checked his watch. "I'm meeting with the board at 3 to discuss the restructuring proposal. Will you join me?" Patricia hesitated. While Alexander had championed her appointment, several board members remained skeptical of her rapid rise from maintenance staff to executive leadership. "I'll be there," she finally agreed. "They need to understand that ethical compliance isn't just a reaction to James's misconduct. It's the foundation of our recovery strategy." After Alexander left, Patricia opened her laptop to review the restructuring proposal once more. The plan would reorganize Pinnacle into 3 distinct divisions, each with independent oversight, to prevent the concentration of power that had enabled James's fraud. It was bold, potentially costly in the short term, but essential for the firm's long-term survival. Her phone chimed with a text message. "DNA results are in. Meeting still on for tonight? Jay." Patricia's stomach tightened. Despite Alexander's assurances, James had been reluctant to acknowledge Lily as his daughter without proof. After weeks of legal negotiations, he had finally agreed to a paternity test, not out of any desire for a relationship with Lily, but to establish the parameters of his financial obligations. "Confirmed 7 p.m. at Mr. Wells's apartment," she texted back. The meeting with the board proved as contentious as Patricia had anticipated. Several members questioned the cost of the restructuring and the necessity of such sweeping changes. Pinnacle has been profitable for 2 decades under the current structure. argued Eleanor Winters, the longest-serving board member. "This seems like an overcorrection for the actions of one bad actor." "With respect, Ms. Winters," Patricia interjected, "the current structure is precisely what allowed that bad actor to embezzle $47 million over 15 years. It wasn't just James. It was a system that placed too much unchecked authority in too few hands." "And you would know all about that, wouldn't you?" Winters replied coolly. "Given your unique perspective on the company's operations." The implication was clear. How could someone who had so recently been cleaning these offices presume to reshape the company's entire structure? Alexander stepped in before Patricia could respond. "Patricia brings exactly the perspective we need right now. Someone who has seen Pinnacle from multiple angles and understands both the practical and ethical implications of our decisions." By the end of the 3-hour meeting, the board had tentatively approved the restructuring, though with a 6-month probationary period and stringent performance metrics. "You handled that well," Alexander told Patricia as they left the boardroom. "Don't let Eleanor get to you. She was close to James. Still can't quite believe what he did." "I understand," Patricia said. "Trust takes time to build. I'm prepared for that." At 7 that evening, Patricia and Lily arrived at Alexander's Tribeca loft for the meeting with James. Patricia had explained to Lily only that they were meeting her biological father, a former colleague of her mother's who hadn't known about her until recently. "Will he like me?" Lily had asked that morning, her usual confidence faltering. "Anyone who gets to know you would be lucky to have you in their life," Patricia had answered carefully, avoiding a direct response. The truth was, she had no idea how James would react to Lily now that paternity had been confirmed. James arrived precisely on time, just as he had for his confrontation with Alexander 3 months earlier. He looked different, thinner, with more grey in his hair and less swagger in his bearing. The loss of his position and reputation had clearly taken a toll. "Patricia," he nodded stiffly. His gaze shifted to Lily, lingering on her face with an unreadable expression. "And you must be Lily." Lily stepped forward, extending her hand with a poise that made Patricia's heart swell with pride. "It's nice to meet you, Mr. Harrington." James seemed momentarily taken aback by the formality, but shook her hand. Likewise, Alexander ushered them into the living room, where refreshments had been arranged. An uncomfortable silence descended as they settled into their seats. "I've reviewed the test results," James finally said, addressing Patricia while avoiding eye contact with Lily. "My attorneys have drafted a trust agreement for Lily's education and future needs." He removed a document from his briefcase and placed it on the coffee table. "I believe you'll find the terms generous." Patricia didn't reach for the document. "This isn't just about money, James." "Isn't it?" he countered. "Let's be honest. You don't want me in her life, and I have no interest in playing daddy at this stage of my career. This arrangement benefits everyone." "Except me," Lily spoke up, her voice small but steady. "Don't I get a say in whether I have a father?" James finally looked directly at his daughter. "I'm not father material, Lily, never have been. The best thing I can do for you is provide financial security and then stay out of your way." "That's what you think being a father is," Lily challenged. "Just money." "Lily," Patricia cautioned, surprised by her daughter's boldness. "No, she's right to ask," Alexander intervened. "It's a fair question, James. What do you think being a father means?" James's jaw tightened. "I wouldn't know. Mine left when I was 8. Never heard from him again." The revelation hung in the air, offering a glimpse into the man behind the polished exterior. "Mine left before I was born," Lily said after a moment. "Or at least, that's what I thought. But he didn't really leave, did he? He just didn't know about me." She fixed James with a penetrating gaze. "But now you do know. So what are you going to do about it?" James looked genuinely flustered, perhaps for the first time in his professional life. I don't know. You could start by getting to know me," Lily suggested. "I'm pretty good at math. I like mysteries and chess. I want to be a forensic accountant someday." A flicker of surprise crossed James's face. "Forensic accounting? That's an unusual ambition for someone your age." "I like finding the truth in numbers," Lily replied with a shrug. "Mr. Wells says I have a gift for it." James shot Alexander a look that might have been accusatory or perhaps merely questioning. "She does," Alexander confirmed. "She's the one who spotted the discrepancies in the Westridge contract, remember?" James turned back to Lily with new interest. "You did that? Without any training?" Lily nodded, a hint of pride in her expression. "Remarkable," James murmured almost to himself. Then, with visible effort, he straightened in his chair and addressed Patricia. "I'd like to amend my proposal. In addition to the financial provisions, I'd like to request occasional meetings with Lily, perhaps monthly to start. If she's agreeable." Patricia looked to Lily, who nodded cautiously. "We can discuss arrangements," Patricia conceded, "but there would need to be clear boundaries and expectations." "Of course," James agreed, his tone more respectful than it had been moments before. As they worked through the details, Patricia observed a subtle shift in James's demeanor whenever he interacted with Lily, a tentative softening, as though he were encountering something entirely foreign, yet oddly compelling. It wasn't affection, exactly, but perhaps the first seedling of recognition. This child was part of him, whether he had planned it or not. Later, after James had departed with promises to have his attorneys revise the agreement, Alexander poured Patricia a glass of wine. "That went better than expected," he observed. "We'll see," Patricia replied cautiously. "James has always been charming when it suited his purposes." "True," Alexander acknowledged. "But I've known him for 20 years, and I've never seen him knocked off balance like that before. Lily has that effect on people." Patricia smiled, watching her daughter, who was now exploring Alexander's extensive library. "She always has. Even as a baby, she had this way of looking at you that made you feel seen, really seen. An important quality in a forensic accountant," Alexander noted with amusement. "Is that really what she wants to be?" Patricia asked. "She's never mentioned it to me." "We've been discussing career options during our weekend sessions," Alexander explained. "She has a natural aptitude for investigative financial work." Patricia nodded thoughtfully. "She's always been drawn to puzzles, finding hidden patterns, solving mysteries." She sipped her wine. "I just never imagined her using those skills in the corporate world that once rejected me." "Not rejected," Alexander corrected gently. "Delayed. And now, perhaps, it's come full circle. You're rebuilding Pinnacle's ethical framework, while Lily might someday protect its financial integrity." As they watched Lily carefully examining the spines of Alexander's first edition book collection, the future seemed to hover before them. Uncertain, but filled with possibilities that neither Patricia nor her daughter could have imagined just a few months earlier, when they moved silently through Pinnacle's offices after hours, invisible to the power brokers whose world they now inhabited. Chapter 6. The Turning Point. 1 year after James Harrington's resignation, Pinnacle Investments hosted its annual Client Appreciation Gala at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. The event, always lavish, had taken on new significance this year, a public statement that despite the turmoil of the past 18 months, Pinnacle had not only survived, but was charting a new course. Patricia Taylor stood near the Temple of Dender exhibit, her black evening gown a far cry from the maintenance uniform she'd worn in this same building during previous galas, when she'd been part of the invisible army that kept such events running smoothly. Now, as a key member of Pinnacle's executive team, she sipped champagne and discussed regulatory compliance with the CFO of one of their largest remaining clients. "Patricia," Alexander Wells approached, elegant in his tuxedo. "Senator Mitchell has been asking to meet you. Do you have a moment?" As Alexander led her through the crowd, Patricia caught sight of Lily across the room. At 12, she looked surprisingly grown up in her navy blue dress, engaged in animated conversation with the teenage daughter of a board member. The past year had transformed Lily from a quiet, watchful child into a confident young woman who was thriving at Westridge Academy and beginning to develop a tentative relationship with her biological father. James Harrington was notably absent from tonight's festivities. Though he had maintained his monthly meetings with Lily, he remained persona non grata at Pinnacle. His former clients had been redistributed among other partners, and his name had been removed from all company materials. The financial press had eventually moved on to fresher scandals, allowing Pinnacle to begin rebuilding without the glare of constant media attention. After Patricia's introduction to the senator, Alexander drew her aside. "How are you holding up? These events can be overwhelming even for those of us who've been doing them for years." "I'm managing," Patricia replied with a small smile. "Though I keep having the strangest impulse to pick up discarded napkins or straighten the floral arrangements." Alexander laughed. "Old habits. Speaking of which, the board meeting yesterday went better than expected. Your compliance protocols are showing results. Client confidence is up 15% from last quarter. That's encouraging, Patricia acknowledged, but we still have work to do. The audit of our international divisions revealed some concerning practices in the Singapore office, already being addressed thanks to your team. Alexander's expression grew serious. The board was impressed, Patricia, so impressed that they've unanimously approved your appointment to the position of Chief Ethics Officer with a seat on the executive committee. Patricia stared at him. That's unexpected, is it? You've essentially been doing the job already. This just makes it official. Alexander smiled. With a substantial salary increase, of course. Before Patricia could respond, her phone vibrated with a text message. She glanced down, expecting to see a message from the babysitter, watching Lily's younger cousins, who had come to stay with them for the summer. Instead, she saw James Harrington's name on the screen. Emergency, need to speak with you immediately. Lobby in 10 minutes. Patricia frowned. In the year since the paternity confirmation, James had been punctilious about respecting boundaries. He communicated about Lily through proper channels and never contacted Patricia directly, except regarding scheduled meetings. Is something wrong? Alexander asked, noticing her expression. I'm not sure. James wants to meet me in the lobby, says it's an emergency. She showed him the message. Alexander's brow furrowed. That's unusual. Would you like me to come with you? No, I can handle James. Patricia glanced across the room to where Lily had been standing, but her daughter was no longer there. Could you find Lily and keep an eye on her until I get back? Of course. Patricia made her way through the elegant crowd, accepting congratulations from colleagues who had heard about her promotion and navigating around wealthy donors who barely noticed her. The cognitive dissonance of her new position still struck her at times. How quickly the invisible could become visible with the right opportunity and advocate. James was waiting near the museum's entrance, looking uncharacteristically disheveled. His tie was askew and he kept checking his watch nervously. James, what's going on? Patricia approached him cautiously. I received this an hour ago, he said without preamble, thrusting his phone toward her. On the screen was an email with the subject line, Pinnacle Fraud Evidence, and an attachment. Patricia skimmed the message. Anonymous blackmail? That's your emergency? Look at the attachment, James insisted. It's documentation of every transaction I ever manipulated, every contract I altered. Information that only someone with intimate knowledge of both the firm and my personal activities could have compiled. Patricia scrolled through the attached document, her concern growing. This is comprehensive. Who would have access to all this? That's what I've been trying to figure out. James ran a hand through his thinning hair. My first thought was you, but this includes details of transactions from before your time at the firm, even before your internship. What exactly do they want? $2 million, transferred to an offshore account within 48 hours, or they release everything to the SEC, the press, and the district attorney's office. James looked genuinely afraid, a new expression for a man Patricia had only ever seen confident or angry. Pinnacle barely survived the controlled disclosure of my activities. A public scandal of this magnitude would destroy the firm completely. You need to tell Alexander, Patricia said firmly. I can't. The agreement I signed when I resigned prevents me from any contact with current Pinnacle leadership, except through attorneys. James's voice took on a pleading tone Patricia had never heard from him before. That's why I needed to talk to you. You have Alexander's ear. Make him understand what's at stake. Patricia studied him skeptically. Why do you care what happens to Pinnacle? You're no longer associated with the firm. My entire life's work is tied to that company, James replied, a flash of his old intensity returning. And despite what you may think of me, I don't want to see hundreds of employees lose their livelihoods because of my mistakes. He hesitated. And Lily's future is tied to Pinnacle now, too. You've built a new life there. I don't want to see that destroyed. The mention of Lily gave Patricia pause. James's relationship with his daughter had evolved slowly over the past year, but there had been genuine progress. His monthly chess matches with Lily had gradually extended from polite hour-long sessions to afternoon-long conversations about mathematics, business strategy, and Lily's academic interests. Let me see the email headers, Patricia said, taking the phone and examining the technical details of the message. Something about the routing information struck her as familiar. Do you recognize anything? James asked eagerly. Possibly. I need to check something. Patricia handed the phone back. Wait here. She hurried back to the main event space, searching the crowd for Alexander. She found him near the Egyptian wing, deep in conversation with a group of investors. "Alexander, I need to speak with you privately," she interrupted, her expression conveying the urgency. He excused himself immediately and followed her to a quiet alcove. "What's happened? Is it James?" "In a way," Patricia quickly explained the situation. "I think I know who might be behind this, but I need to confirm something. Where's Lily?" With Eleanor Winters by the European paintings, she was asking Lily about her science project. Alexander frowned. "You don't think Lily has anything to do with this?" "Not directly, no," Patricia replied, "but I have a suspicion. Can you keep James in the lobby?" "Tell him I'm checking something with the IT department." Alexander nodded, though his expression remained concerned. "Be careful, Patricia. Whatever is happening, we need to handle it discreetly." Patricia made her way through the museum to the European painting section, where she found Lily and Eleanor Winters examining a Rembrandt. "Lily, may I speak with you for a moment?" Patricia called. Lily looked up, her expression momentarily guilty before smoothing into polite interest. "Of course, Mom." They stepped away from Eleanor, finding privacy beside a lesser-known Dutch landscape. "Lily, I need to ask you something important, and I need you to be completely honest with me," Patricia began. "Have you been accessing files related to James's financial activities at Pinnacle?" Lily's eyes widened. "How did you—" "Someone sent James blackmail material containing detailed information about his fraud," Patricia explained quietly. "Information that very few people would have access to. The email came from an anonymous account, but the routing patterns match those of a proxy server you once showed me for your cybersecurity project." Lily's face paled. "I didn't blackmail anyone. I was just investigating." "Start from the beginning," Patricia said firmly. Lily took a deep breath. "After Mr. Wells started mentoring me in financial analysis, I got curious about what my father had actually done. Everyone was so careful not to discuss details around me. So I might have used Mr. Wells's computer when he stepped out during one of our sessions. His password wasn't that hard to figure out." "Lily," Patricia was shocked. "That's a serious breach of trust." "I know," Lily admitted, looking down. "But once I started finding things, I couldn't stop. It was like a puzzle. I kept digging, using what I learned in computer club to access more secure files." She looked up, her expression earnest. "I just wanted to understand what kind of person my father really is, what he did. Why everyone talks about him in whispers when they think I can't hear." Patricia struggled to balance her alarm at Lily's actions with a reluctant admiration for her daughter's initiative and skill. "And what did you do with this information once you collected it?" "I compiled it all in a secure document and encrypted it," Lily explained. "I was planning to show it to you and Mr. Wells eventually to prove that I could be useful to the company. I thought maybe I could help make sure nothing like that ever happened again." "But you didn't send a blackmail demand to James?" "No!" Lily looked genuinely horrified. "I would never do that." Patricia believed her. "Then who has access to your files? Who knows about your investigation?" Lily hesitated. "I might have shown Sophie some of what I found." "Sophie Chen, James's former assistant." Lily nodded miserably. "She's been nice to me whenever I visit the office. She said she was working on a special project about corporate ethics and seemed really interested in my research methods." The pieces clicked into place. Sophie, who had managed to avoid any connection to James's fraud despite her position as his trusted assistant. Sophie, who had cooperated with the internal investigation in exchange for keeping her job, but who had been passed over for promotion twice since the scandal. "Stay here," Patricia instructed Lily. "Don't move, don't talk to anyone about this. I need to speak with Mr. Wells immediately." Patricia hurried back to the lobby, where she found Alexander keeping a visibly agitated James company. "It's Sophie Chen," she said without preamble. "She manipulated Lily into gathering information, then used it to blackmail James." "Sophie?" Alexander's expression hardened. "That would explain how she's remained untouched by all this. She must have been as deeply involved as James all along. More likely she saw an opportunity for a final payday," Patricia suggested. "She has access to Lily because she works at Pinnacle, and she used that to exploit a 12-year-old's curiosity about her father." James looked stricken. "Lily was involved in this?" "Not in the blackmail," Patricia clarified. "But she's been conducting her own investigation into your activities at Pinnacle. Sophie took advantage of that." Alexander pulled out his phone. "I'm calling security. We need to lock down Sophie's access to all Pinnacle systems immediately. As Alexander stepped away to make the call, James turned to Patricia. I never wanted Lily mixed up in any of this. That's why I've been so careful not to discuss business during our time together. She's your daughter, James, Patricia replied. She has your intelligence, your curiosity, and unfortunately, your disregard for boundaries. The difference is, she's still young enough to learn better habits. The ghost of a smile crossed James's face. She gets her moral compass from you, thankfully. He sobered quickly. What happens now? Now, Patricia said, watching as Alexander returned from his call, we contain the situation, again, and we make sure Lily understands the consequences of her actions, even when her intentions were good. Alexander rejoined them. Security is handling Sophie. They'll escort her from the building first thing Monday morning, and our legal team will take it from there. He looked between Patricia and James. This stays between us, for Lily's sake and for Pinnacle's. As they stood in uneasy alliance in the museum lobby, the sounds of the gala continuing unabated behind them, Patricia realized that the past would never truly release its grip on their present. The ripples from James's actions, and now Lily's, would continue to shape their lives in ways none of them could fully predict. Chapter 7, Full Circle. 5 years later, the Harvard Business School campus glowed golden in the late afternoon sunlight as 17-year-old Lily Taylor walked beside Alexander Wells, both carrying coffee cups from the campus cafe. Autumn leaves crunched beneath their feet, a sound that always reminded Lily of possibilities and fresh starts. So what did you think of Professor Michael's lecture? Alexander asked, sipping his black coffee. Enlightening, Lily replied. I never considered how ethical frameworks might need to adapt for artificial intelligence in financial systems, but I still think human oversight is irreplaceable. Alexander smiled at her confident analysis. At 17, Lily carried herself with the poise of someone much older, her intelligence matched by a maturity that sometimes surprised even those who knew her well. She had grown into a striking young woman with her mother's warmth and her father's analytical precision, a combination that made her both formidable and approachable. Harvard would be lucky to have you, Alexander remarked, glancing around the campus that Lily was considering for her undergraduate studies. Though your mother still hopes you'll choose Columbia. To keep me closer to home, Lily nodded, understanding Patricia's perspective. But I need to make this decision based on which program best fits my goals. They found a bench overlooking the Charles River and sat down, enjoying the relative quiet after a day of campus tours and meetings with admissions officers. I received an email from my father this morning, Lily said after a comfortable silence. He's accepted a teaching position at the University of California. Business ethics, ironically enough. Alexander raised an eyebrow. James Harrington teaching ethics? The world is full of surprises. Who better to teach about ethical lapses than someone who's experienced the consequences firsthand? Lily countered. He's actually quite good at it, according to student reviews. Brutally honest about his mistakes. In the 5 years since the blackmail attempt, James had gradually rebuilt a life for himself. Not the high-flying existence he'd once known, but something more grounded. After paying substantial restitution and serving as a cooperating witness in several financial fraud cases, he had eventually found his way to academia, where his first-hand knowledge of corporate malfeasance made him a uniquely valuable instructor. His relationship with Lily had evolved too. Their monthly chess games had given way to regular video calls and summer visits, establishing a connection that, while never conventionally paternal, had become meaningful to them both. And how is your mother handling the news of his California move? Alexander asked. Lily smiled. Better than you might expect. They've reached a kind of peace over the years. She twisted her coffee cup thoughtfully. Mum says that watching him try to become a better person has helped her let go of old resentments. Patricia's own life had transformed dramatically since that night at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Now Pinnacle's chief ethics officer and a member of its board of directors, she had completed her law degree and become a respected voice in corporate governance circles. Under her guidance, Pinnacle had established one of Wall Street's most robust ethical compliance programs, a model that other firms had begun to emulate. Speaking of your mother, Alexander checked his watch. She should be finishing her keynote at the conference by now. Shall we head back to the hotel to meet her for dinner? Lily nodded, but made no move to stand. Before we go, there's something I wanted to discuss with you. Alexander settled back on the bench, recognizing her serious tone. I'm listening. I've been thinking about what happens after college, Lily began. Everyone assumes I'll join Pinnacle eventually, follow in your footsteps, or Mom's, or even my father's before everything happened. And that's not what you want, Alexander asked carefully. I'm not sure, Lily admitted. Pinnacle has been such a huge part of my life, the good and the bad. It changed everything for us when I found those discrepancies in the Westridge contract. You saved the company, Alexander reminded her, and in many ways, you saved me too. I might have continued in blissful ignorance of James's activities for years, if not for your sharp eyes. Lily shook her head. That's just it. Everyone sees that moment as something extraordinary, but to me it was simply noticing what was there. Numbers that didn't match, patterns that didn't make sense. She met Alexander's gaze directly. What if I want to use that ability somewhere else? Somewhere I can make a different kind of impact? Such as, I've been researching financial fraud in healthcare systems, Lily explained, her eyes lighting up with the passion Alexander had come to recognize over years of mentoring her. Billions of dollars are siphoned away from patient care every year through sophisticated schemes that most auditors miss. I want to develop systems that can detect those patterns automatically, tools that would make what I did with the Westridge contract obsolete. Alexander felt a surge of pride mixed with a tinge of disappointment. He had always hoped Lily would eventually take a leadership role at Pinnacle, perhaps even succeed him someday. But he also recognized the spark of genuine purpose in her expression, the same spark he'd seen in her eyes when she was 11 years old, explaining number discrepancies in his office. That sounds like important work, he said finally. And if anyone can develop such systems, it's you. Lily's shoulders relaxed, tension he hadn't realized she was carrying melting away. You're not disappointed? How could I be disappointed in you pursuing work that matters to you? Alexander shook his head. The greatest gift I can give you is the freedom to chart your own course, something your parents didn't always have. Lily impulsively hugged him, an uncharacteristic display of affection from the usually reserved teenager. Thank you. For everything. As they walked back toward the rental car, Alexander reflected on the remarkable journey that had brought them to this moment. From a chance encounter with a cleaning woman's daughter to this, watching that same young woman prepare to make her mark on the world in ways he couldn't have imagined. You know, he said as they reached the car, Pinnacle's healthcare division could benefit from exactly the kind of fraud detection systems you're describing. Just something to consider for the future. Lily laughed. Always the businessman, Mr. Wells. Always, he agreed with a smile. Back in New York that weekend, Patricia hosted a small dinner party in their Upper West Side apartment, a celebration of Lily's successful college visits and Patricia's recent appointment to a prestigious financial ethics commission. The gathering included Alexander, his wife Claire, and a few close colleagues who had become friends over the years. After dinner, while the adults lingered over coffee in the living room, Lily slipped away to her bedroom. On her desk sat the framed certificate from the national mathematics competition she had won the previous year, alongside a photograph of her with Patricia and Alexander at Pinnacle's 10-year anniversary gala. Next to these was a newer addition, a simple wooden chess piece, a knight with a note card propped against it. The card bore James's distinctive handwriting. To my daughter, who sees patterns others miss. Your move next. Lily picked up the knight, running her fingers over the smooth wood. The piece represented so much, her father's acknowledgement of her abilities, their shared strategic thinking, the complex relationship they had built from such troubled beginnings. A soft knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. Patricia entered, carrying 2 mugs of hot chocolate, their traditional nighttime ritual since Lily was small. Hiding from the grown-ups, Patricia teased, handing Lily a mug. Just taking a moment, Lily replied. It's been an intense week. Patricia sat on the edge of the bed. Alexander mentioned your career ideas. Healthcare fraud detection? Are you disappointed I'm not planning to join Pinnacle? Lily asked directly. Sweetheart, I cleaned offices at Pinnacle for years, hoping someday you might have opportunities I never had. Patricia smiled. The fact that you have choices, real choices about your future, is all I ever wanted for you. Lily nodded toward the living room. But you found your place there. You rebuilt your legal career through Pinnacle. I did, Patricia acknowledged. But that's my story, not yours. You get to write your own. They sipped their hot chocolate in comfortable silence before Patricia spoke again. You know, sometimes I think about that night. You pointing out those numbers to Alexander in his office. Such a small moment that changed everything. I was just being nosy, Lily admitted with a grin. You were being observant, Patricia corrected. And honest. You saw something wrong and spoke up about it, even though it would have been easier to stay quiet. I didn't know what would happen, Lily said softly. I didn't know it would lead to finding my father, or to you getting a second chance at your legal career, or to all of this. She gestured around her comfortable bedroom, so different from the cramped space she'd grown up in. That's how life works, Patricia replied. Small choices, honest moments, they set things in motion that we can't predict. She reached out to smooth Lily's hair, a maternal gesture she'd never outgrown despite her daughter's increasing independence. I'm proud of you, Lily. Not just for what you accomplished when you were 11, but for who you're becoming now. From the living room came the sound of laughter, Alexander telling one of his infamous Wall Street stories, no doubt. The easy camaraderie of the gathering represented everything they had built in the aftermath of scandal and revelation. New relationships, second chances, unexpected alliances. We should rejoin the party, Patricia suggested, standing. Lily placed the chess knight back on her desk. I'll be right there. After her mother left, Lily lingered a moment longer, looking at the three symbols of her life's unusual trajectory: the academic achievement, the corporate connection, and the complex family bond represented by the chess piece. Each represented a different facet of her identity, pieces of a puzzle that had once seemed mismatched, but now formed a coherent picture. She thought of the 11-year-old girl who had once trailed behind her mother through Pinnacle's gleaming offices, invisible to the powerful people who worked there. That girl could never have imagined standing where Lily stood now, poised between prestigious universities, mentored by a business leader, acknowledged by her biological father, and supported by a mother whose own remarkable journey mirrored her daughter's potential. The truth had indeed set them free, though the path to that freedom had been neither straight nor easy. And as Lily rejoined the gathering in the living room, accepted a playful debate challenge from Alexander, and caught her mother's proud glance from across the room, she understood that the greatest fraud they had uncovered wasn't about mismatched numbers or diverted funds at all. It was the fraud of believing that people like them, a cleaning woman and her daughter, couldn't change the world. That single acts of courage and honesty couldn't ripple outward to transform lives. That patterns, once established, couldn't be broken. Lily had proven otherwise, and whatever path she chose next, Harvard or Columbia, healthcare innovation or corporate leadership, she would carry forward the most important lesson from that night in Alexander Wells' office, that sometimes the people with the clearest vision are those society has taught to be invisible, and that truth once spoken can never be completely silenced again. So Lily, Alexander called from his place by the fireplace, tell everyone about this fraud detection system you're designing. I think they'll be as impressed as I was. As all eyes turned to her, Lily stepped fully into the circle of light, ready to share her vision of a future where patterns couldn't be hidden and numbers always told the truth, a future she had helped make possible with a simple observation on a night that now seemed like both yesterday and a lifetime ago.